Fans of Dragon Ball Z tend to agree that the Buu saga is far from the best in the series. In fact, it's probably one of, if not the worst saga in the franchise. Sorry, Buu. However, it wasn't all bad, since it did have some awesome points and introduced some cool new elements to the series. Namely, we got Super Saiyan 3, Majin Vegeta, and Fusion out of an otherwise less than stellar saga. While Fusion can't save the Buu saga from, being the Buu saga, it was a pretty neat concept that ended up becoming a signature part of the series. Fusion also comes with its own set of ridiculous rules, both written and unwritten, that the characters have to follow. What rules, you ask? Well, let's take a look at some of the things all Dragon Ball Fusions do. Starting off, we have the most obvious aspect of Fusion characters, their cocky personalities. This is specifically a trait of Fusion Dance Fusions and Saiyan Potara Fusions, and thus not every type of fused character, but regardless, it's still a rule that most fusions follow. The first case of this came in the form of Gotenks. After Goten and Trunks successfully performed the Fusion Dance, they formed Gotenks, a warrior more powerful than the sum of his parts, and he knew it, since he was quick to challenge Buu and show off just how powerful he was. In fact, this cockiness ended up costing Gotenks, since he challenged Buu too early and was severely injured as a result. While this might have originally been written off as two kids fusing, making for an egotistical character, the trend of cocky fusions continued when Vegito was introduced. Like Gotenks, Vegito was a bit too cocky for his own good, and although he could rightfully boast more than Gotenks could, since he absolutely dominated Super Buu without breaking a sweat, his arrogance still seemed out of character. Sure, Vegeta has a bit of an ego, but Vegito was far more overconfident, showing that fusion adds a little something to the Fusees' personalities. This next rule is another one that applies only to Fusion Dance Fusions and Potara Fusions between Saiyans in the franchise, but nonetheless it's still a pretty prominent part of fusions. We're talking about the time limit that comes with the Potara earrings and the Fusion Dance. For the Potara earrings, the fusion only lasts 30 minutes with an hour of recharge time between fusions. And for the Fusion Dance, the fusions last an hour for non-Kais. These time limits are a given, something that was established up front and a fact that most fans of the series know. However, if you look closer, you'll find that this rule leads to a recurring gag that stands as another rule for all fusion characters. The gag which we're referring to is when a fusion runs out at the absolute worst time. An example of this came in Gotenks' fight against Buu, in which his Super Saiyan 3 form pushed up the clock and left Trunks and Goten unfused just as the tide was turning. Later on, Vegito's fusion ran out while he was inside Buu's body, and again when he fought fused Zamasu. Fusion characters tend to have bad luck when it comes to their fusion running out at the very worst time. During the Buu saga, the Fusion Dance was more or less presented as Earth's last hope against the evil Majin Buu. Thus, in order to save the world, Goten and Trunks would have to dance perfectly. Yeah, it's a bit silly, but the dance had to be done right, or else it would go completely wrong. Which is exactly what happened with Gotenks, and with Gogeta in Fusion Reborn, and with Gogeta's canon appearance in Dragon Ball Super Broly. Starting to see a pattern here. In every instance, both canon and non-canon of the Fusion Dance in the Dragon Ball franchise, the two Fusees attempting to do the dance always mess up twice, resulting in two failed fusions, a frail skinny one and an overweight one, before they eventually get it right. This gag has been used in the Buu saga, in Fusion Reborn, and in Dragon Ball Super Broly. Maybe it's because the Fusion Dance is actually really difficult to master, or maybe it's just because Dragon Ball loves to reuse this gag. But regardless of the reason, it's basically an unwritten rule at this point that all Fusion Dance fusions must fail twice and result in two warriors that are absolutely unfit for battle before being successful. Before the Fusion Dance and the Potara earrings were introduced into the Dragon Ball franchise, there was another kind of fusion that played a prominent role in the series: Namekian Fusion. Unlike the Fusion Dance and the Potara, Namekian Fusion is less like two beings fusing together and more like one absorbing the other. You see, when the Fusion Dance or the Potara are used, the two beings take on a combined appearance and have personality traits from both Fusees. But with Namekian Fusion, the power of one Namekian is absorbed into another, the Namekian being absorbed losing all sense of self, personality, and existence after being absorbed. Piccolo has used this form of fusion twice, once when he fused with Nail on Namek and again when he and Kami fused to reform the nameless Namekian that they originated from. However, despite the fact that it was made clear that the Namekian being absorbed loses themselves in the Namekian absorbing them, it's been a recurring theme for Piccolo and other Namekians to feel those who they've absorbed. All that was a confusing way of saying that Namekian Fusion is not as one-sided as it seems, as seen when Piccolo feels Kami and Nail within him. When the fight against Majin Buu seemed more and more desperate, the Supreme Kais presented Goku with another form of fusion that could possibly be the end of Buu: Potara Fusion. This form of fusion was even better than the fusion dance, since not only did it make the resulting fusion stronger, but it also didn't require learning a complicated dance. However, there was a major downside to this kind of fusion. It was permanent. Unlike the fusion dance, Potara Fusion would link the two warriors fusing forever. The old Kai revealed this fact just a bit too late after Shin and Kibido had fused, but nonetheless, if Goku fused with someone on Earth to defeat Buu, they'd be stuck together forever. Or at least that's what everyone thought. Later down the line in Dragon Ball Super, this was retconned, and it was revealed that Potara Fusion is only permanent for Kais. Examples of permanent Kai fusion are Kibido Kai, who had to use Dragon Balls to unfuse, and the old Kai, who fused with a powerful witch by accident and has been stuck like that ever since. This rule can also result in disastrous effects when a mortal and deity fuse, which was the case with Fuse Zamasu. Oh boy. When you think about it, fusion is kinda weird. On top of two people sharing a fused body, there are some big questions that the concept raises whenever it's used in Dragon Ball. For one thing, is it two people controlling the brain, or is it both brains combined into one? Perhaps it's the latter, since another strange rule that all fusions seem to follow is that they speak with the two voices of the fused. This is true of Gotenks, who speaks with Trunks and Goten's voices at the same time, as well as Vegito and Gogeta, who speak with Goku and Vegeta's voices simultaneously. It's a pretty obvious rule for fusion characters that most people know, but it's still worth pointing out when listing off all the strange rules that fusion characters follow in Dragon Ball. However, this rule doesn't apply across every version of Dragon Ball Z, since different dubs have opted to use one voice actor for fusions, and even the current team of English voice actors has stated that they wish they went with a single voice instead of having to speak at the same speed for fusion scenes, and we can't blame them, since it seems pretty difficult to pull off. As one might expect, when two characters fuse, the resulting fusion has an appearance that is a combination of both fusees. Of course, everybody knows this. It's implied by the concept of fusion, and it's made clear right off the bat that fusion characters have fusion appearances. However, what you might not have known is that the appearances of Saiyan fusions is centered on hair. It makes sense since crazy hairstyles are such a staple of the franchise, but most don't realize that when it comes to Saiyan fusions, their hair is also combined into a new style when they fuse. This is not always the case for other fusions in the series, like Kibido Kai, who just had Kibido's hair rather than an amalgam of both characters. However, if you look at Gotenks, he has spiky hair like Goten and purple streaks from Trunks' hair. Gogeta and Vegito both have the same hairstyle, which is Vegeta's upward spikes with some spiky bangs like Goku. Heck, if you look at fused Zamasu, you can see that Goku Black Saiyan hair became the fusion's hairstyle, showing that Saiyan hair plays a big role when Saiyans fuse, combining the two fusees' hair together to make for an interesting new do. Remember earlier when we mentioned that fusions seem to run out at the worst possible time? Part of the reason for this is because fusions are temporary by nature. But another factor is power. No, not the power that the fusion creates, but rather the power that a fusion uses. It's not 100% clear how it works, but we know that fusions are like fortune teller Baba's single-day resurrections. They have time limits, and using up too much power can end them prematurely. There are two instances of power drainage resulting in a fusion ending early. The first comes from the Fusion Saga of Dragon Ball Z. After Goten and Trunks had successfully mastered fusion, they managed to take it to another level by pushing their fused form to Super Saiyan 3. Though this greatly increased their battle power, it also managed to drain the power of the fusion, cutting it short at the worst possible time. The same thing happened to Vegito later on in Dragon Ball Super when he was fighting fused Zamasu. During their fight, Vegito broke out Super Saiyan Blue, which pushed the fusion too hard and made it cut short before the hour was up. Come on guys, fusion's strong enough, don't risk the time cut. Now, this is one we're sure that not everyone knows. Whenever a fusion fails and creates an overweight fusion, the fusees must wait for the fusion to end before they can try again. Most people know this part, but did you know that the fusees may not have memory of their failed fusion? And no, this isn't something that happens with every fusion. It's not like a fusion has its own set of memories. It only happens when the fusion fails and only when that failure results in a fat fusion. It's a weird thing that could easily be written off if it only happened once, but it happened on 2 different occasions, possibly 3. The first time it happened was when Goten and Trunks fused to make fat Gotenks, and when asked about it later, they had no idea it happened. Similarly, Goku and Vegeta couldn't remember how they ended up where they were while they were fat Gogeta, showing that memory seems to fail whenever a failed fusion is created. It possibly happened a 3rd time when Goku and Vegeta fused in Dragon Ball Super Broly, since they failed and made fat Gogeta, but the failed fusion only appeared for a moment, so we can't be sure. Remember earlier when we asked the question of who is dominant in a fusion? Well, with mortals, it seems that both fusees have control over their actions. But this isn't the case for Kais, specifically Supreme Kais. Case in point, when Kibito fused with the Supreme Kai as a means of showing how Potara Fusion works, there was no question as to who was in charge of the resulting fused body. Based on the fact that Kibito Kai acted exactly like Supreme Kai Shin and had the same unaltered voice as him, it's evident that Supreme Kai are dominant in whatever fusion they're part of. The other example of this is the Old Kai, who was once young and lacking in magic power, but was turned old and wrinkly when an old witch stole one of his Potara earrings and fused with him. Yet the old witch doesn't seem to have any control over the Old Kai, and he remains dominant over his fused body. As for the other example of a fused Supreme Kai, fused Zamasu, it's kind of impossible to tell who's in charge, since they're the same person. So we're gonna go ahead and assume that the rule still applies here. Fusion is a powerful tool in battle, not just because it combines the power of 2 warriors, but also because it multiplies that power. And when you throw in the power multipliers of Super Saiyan forms, then you get some immensely powerful warriors. However, despite this, there hasn't really been an instance of a Saiyan fusion winning a battle. In fact, each Saiyan fusion has gotten close to winning, but then loses in the end through some underhanded technique. A fusion timeout or their opponent being stronger. No matter the reason, if you take a look at every Saiyan fusion, they've all weirdly come close to victory, only to have it snatched away. The entire list of Saiyan fusions include Gotenks, Vegito, Gogeta, and Kefla. Think about each time these fusions have shown up. Gotenks lost pretty much every battle he fought, either because of arrogance or fusion timeout. Vegito fell victim to Boo's tricks and was absorbed into his body and later timed out against Zamasu. Gogeta was close to defeating Broly, but he was wished away before he could finish him off, and Kefla dominated against Goku before he started using Ultra Instinct. Clearly, there's a pattern here, and every Saiyan fusion is a part of it. Next up, we have another rule that's pretty obvious and well known to fans of Dragon Ball, the fact that fusion characters have specific types of clothing. This, of course, only refers to Fusion Dance and Potara Fusion characters, and not Namekian Fusions, but it's still an important rule to note. You see, whenever the Fusion Dance is used, the resulting Fusion Warrior is clothed in the garb of the aliens that created the Fusion Dance, the Metamorans, which consists of a black and yellow vest, a blue sash, wristbands, and a white pair of those signature Dragon Ball poofy pants. No matter what the fusees were wearing during the Fusion Dance, they end up wearing that getup. This is not the case for Potara Fusions, but there's still a clothes-related rule for them. Specifically, the clothes of the 2 fusees are combined into one outfit that reflects elements of both characters. This is the case with both Vegito and Kefla, whose outfits are hybrids of the 2 characters that form her. Though for some reason, Vegito's outfit remains the same even when he's wearing his full armor. Does someone want to explain how that one works to us, because we're kinda confused? Another weird rule that fusion characters seem to follow is that their attacks are either insane or are combinations of both fusees' attacks. The best example of the former is Gotenks, whose attacks are completely bonkers. For those who don't know or who've blocked out this part of the Boo saga from their memory, when Gotenks faced off against Boo, he broke out some of the weirdest techniques ever to be seen in the franchise. Perhaps the weirdest of them all was his Kamikaze Ghost attack, which consisted of splitting up a weird ghost version of himself that exploded whenever someone touched it. Yeah, the Boo saga was weird. No, Dragon Ball itself is just weird. Other insane attacks include all of Gogeta's way over-the-top attacks used in Dragon Ball Super Broly. Vegito's Key Sword attacks, and pretty much all of Kefla's attacks, which have the power of Kale's Berserker attacks behind them. As for the other type of fusion attacks, it's practically a rule that fusion characters use attacks that combine two attacks of the fusees. This rule has only been applied to non-canon media like video games and Dragon Ball GT. But we just had to talk about it since it created the badass attacks like the Big Bang Kamehameha. Taking a look at another obvious aspect of fusion, we have a rule that's a given with any kind of fusion character created with the fusion dance or the Potara, a hybrid appearance. Again, it's kind of obvious to point out that fusion characters in Dragon Ball have appearances reflecting both fusees, but we're listing off all the rules of fusion characters, so we still gotta talk about it. The first fusion introduced to the series was, of course, Gotenks, and his appearance was a combination of both Goten and Trunks, as seen by their hair and facial features. He has Trunks' scowl and Goten's face shape, and his hair is a combination of both characters' styles, as we mentioned previously. As for Gogeta and Vegito, they have almost identical appearances, sharing Vegeta's scowl and Goku's softer face shape, as well as a combination of both Saiyans' hairstyles. Kefla is in the same boat, since she has a hairstyle that combines the hair of Caulifla and Kale. Her build is a combination of Kale's mastered legendary Super Saiyan hulking muscles and Caulifla's slimmer frame, and she has a face that combines features of both Saiyans. Again, it's an obvious rule that fusion characters follow, but a rule nonetheless. Last but not least, we have a fusion character rule that makes fusion such a useful technique to begin with: the power increase. See, every fusion character, even Namekian Fusions, is stronger than the two warriors that formed it. In the case of Namekian Fusion, it's just simple addition of two power levels put together, but with the Fusion Dance and the Potara, there are power multipliers that make the technique even more worthwhile. In the case of Fusion Dance fusions, the power of both fusees is combined and then multiplied several times over. However, if you want a longer-lasting, more powerful fusion, then the Potara Fusion is much better, since on top of being easier to do, it multiplies the combined power of the two fusees by tens of times. While we don't know the specific number of both fusion types, it was made clear that the Potara are superior in their ability to multiply power. Thus, it's a rule that every fusion character is stronger than the two warriors who fused, with each subsequent type of fusion that was introduced being stronger than the last. Heck, with how strong the Potara are, you'd think the Supreme Kais would entrust a pair to the heroes of Earth for emergencies. So, there you have it, the weird rules all fusion characters in Dragon Ball have to follow. Did we leave anything out? Are any of these untrue? Which fusions are your favorite? Let us know down in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more Dragon Ball videos. And hey, thanks for watching.